The ultimatum. Commander Elena Vasquez stood at the observation deck of the Orbital Defense Station Aurora, watching the fleet of alien vessels materialize just beyond Earth's moon. There were hundreds of them, each ship larger than anything humanity had ever constructed. Their hulls shimmered with an otherworldly blue light that made the void of space seem darker by comparison. Elena had been a soldier for 20 years, had fought in 3 colonial wars, and had never once felt the cold grip of fear she experienced now. The collective had arrived exactly when they said they would. 3 months ago, they had sent their message to every human settlement across the solar system. The transmission had bypassed every security protocol Earth possessed, appearing simultaneously on every screen, every device, every communication channel. The message was simple and devastating. Humanity had been judged. The verdict was clear. Earth and all its colonies were to be harvested. Elena remembered that day with painful clarity. She had been in her apartment in New Seattle, drinking her morning coffee, when her television suddenly displayed the face of Archon Kelth. The alien's features were vaguely humanoid but wrong in ways that made human eyes uncomfortable. 3 eyes arranged in a triangle pattern, skin that seemed to shift between colors, and a mouth that moved in directions mouths shouldn't move. The Archon had spoken in perfect English, though the words seemed to come from everywhere at once. Humanity of Earth, the Archon had said. You have been selected for assimilation. Your planet possesses resources we require. Your species shows potential for integration into our workforce. You will surrender your world peacefully, or we will take it by force. You have 90 standard days to prepare. Resistance is not advised. The collective has harvested 4,732 species before you. None have successfully resisted. Accept your fate with dignity. The transmission had ended, and the world had erupted into chaos. Governments convened emergency sessions. Military forces mobilized. Scientists worked frantically to understand the technology that had so easily penetrated Earth's defenses. Religious leaders called for prayer. Some people rioted in the streets. Others simply gave up, convinced that resistance against such overwhelming power was futile. But Elena had seen something different in that transmission. She had seen arrogance. The collective was so confident in their superiority that they had given humanity 3 months of warning. They expected surrender. They expected fear. They had clearly never encountered a species that responded to threats with stubborn defiance. They had never met humans. Now, as Elena watched those massive ships arrange themselves in a perfect formation around Earth, she felt her fear transform into something else. Anger. Determination. A fierce pride in her species that refused to be extinguished. Humanity might be outmatched. They might be technologically inferior. But they would not go quietly into whatever fate the collective had planned. Her communications officer, Lieutenant Marcus Webb, approached with a tablet. Commander, we're receiving hails from the collective flagship. Archon Kelth wants to speak with Earth's leadership. The Security Council is convening now. They want you to participate in the conference. Elena nodded. Of course they did. She had become something of a symbol in the past 3 months. While politicians debated and generals argued about strategy, Elena had been the one person consistently appearing in public, telling people not to give up hope. She had given interviews, made speeches, and worked with scientists and engineers to develop any possible defense against the coming invasion. People looked to her for strength, even though she often felt anything but strong. The conference room was filled with holographic projections of world leaders. President Okoye of the African Union, Premier Zhang of the Pacific Coalition, Chancellor Richter of the European Federation, and a dozen others. At the center of the display was the unmistakable form of Archon Kelth, his 3 eyes regarding the assembled humans with something that might have been amusement. Humans of Earth, the Archon began. The grace period has ended. We have arrived to begin the harvesting process. I am pleased to see that you have not attempted any foolish military action. Perhaps your species possesses more wisdom than we anticipated. You will now transmit the surrender protocols we provided. Your military forces will stand down. Your population will report to designated collection points. The process will be painless and efficient. President Okoye leaned forward. She was a woman in her 60s who had led the African Union through economic collapse and civil war. Her voice was steady and strong. Archon Kelth, we have considered your demands carefully. The answer is no. We will not surrender our world. We will not report to your collection points. If you want Earth, you will have to take it from us. The Archon's colors shifted, moving through the spectrum from blue to a deep purple. Elena recognized it as their equivalent of surprise, based on the behavioral studies humanity had managed to compile. This is unexpected, Kelth said. We informed you of the consequences of resistance. Your technology is primitive compared to ours. Your weapons cannot harm our vessels. Your population has no chance of survival if you force us to take military action. Why would you choose extinction over assimilation? Chancellor Richter spoke up. Because we are human. Because our history is filled with moments where we faced impossible odds and fought anyway. Because surrender means losing everything that makes us who we are. We would rather die free than live as slaves in your collective. You misunderstand, the Archon said. Assimilation is not slavery. Species that join the collective are given purpose, security, and a place in the grand design. You would be part of something greater than yourselves. Elena couldn't stay quiet any longer. We already are part of something greater than ourselves. It's called humanity. We don't need your collective to give us purpose. We have our own. The Archon's three eyes focused on Elena with unsettling intensity. You are the one they call the commander. We have observed your activities during the grace period. You have been organizing resistance. Building weapons. Training soldiers. All futile efforts, but admirable in their persistence. Tell me, Commander, do you truly believe your species has any chance of victory? Elena met those alien eyes without flinching. I believe that you've never fought a species like us before. You said you've harvested 4,732 species. How many of them fought back? How many of them made you pay for every inch of ground you took? How many of them were willing to sacrifice everything rather than surrender? The Archon's colors shifted again. Some attempted resistance. All failed. You will fail as well. Maybe, Elena admitted. But we'll make you remember us. Every one of your 4,732 conquered species will look up at your collective and see humans. The ones who said no. The ones who fought to the last. Will become the story you tell to scare other species into surrendering. And that's worth dying for. Premier Zhang nodded. The commander speaks for all of us, Archon. We reject your ultimatum. Leave our solar system, or face the consequences. There was a long silence. When the Archon spoke again, his voice had changed. There was no longer any trace of amusement or condescension. Very well. You have made your choice. The collective will begin harvesting operations immediately. We will take your world by force. We will break your resistance. And when we are finished, humanity will serve the collective whether you wish it or not. Your defiance has cost you the mercy we offered. The transmission ended. The holographic projections of world leaders looked at each other with a mixture of fear and determination. They had just declared war on a force that had conquered thousands of species. There was no going back now. First blood. The collective's first move came 6 hours after the failed negotiation. Their ships began descending through Earth's atmosphere, massive vessels that blotted out the sun as they moved toward major population centers. The plan was obvious. Show overwhelming force, break human morale, and force a quick surrender. It was the same strategy that had worked on 4,732 other worlds. But Earth was about to teach the collective a very expensive lesson. Elena watched from the Aurora as the first collective harvester ship entered the atmosphere over New York. The vessel was enormous, easily 3 kilometers long, and heavily shielded. According to the intelligence humanity had gathered, these ships could withstand nuclear weapons without significant damage. Their energy shields were supposedly impenetrable. Their weapons could level cities in minutes. Against such technology, humanity's defenses seemed pitiful. But the collective had made a critical mistake. They had assumed that because humanity's technology was primitive, humans themselves were primitive. They had judged human intelligence by human tools, never considering that intelligence and resourcefulness were not the same as technological advancement. In the 3 months since the ultimatum, humanity had been working frantically not to match the collective's technology, but to find its weaknesses. Dr. Sarah Chen, humanity's leading physicist, had led the research effort. She was a small woman with intense eyes who had won 3 Nobel Prizes before turning 40. Sarah had looked at the collective's ships not as impossible challenges, but as physics problems waiting to be solved. Every shield has resonance frequencies, she had explained to Elena during one of their planning sessions. Every energy system has tolerances and limits. We can't match their power, but we don't need to. We just need to find the crack in their armor. Now, as that massive harvester ship descended over New York, Sarah's theories were about to be tested. Elena opened a channel to the defense batteries hidden in buildings across the city. All units, this is Aurora Command. Target is entering optimal range. Hold for my mark. The harvester ship's shields flared as it entered the lower atmosphere, a shimmering bubble of energy that could deflect any conventional weapon. The collective had probably detected humanity's defense batteries. They were likely amused by the primitive missiles and railguns pointed at their impervious ship. They had seen this play out thousands of times before. The prey always tried to fight. The prey always failed. Fire, Elena commanded. What happened next was something the collective had never experienced before. The missiles that launched from New York's hidden batteries were not conventional weapons. They carried no explosive warheads. Instead, they were packed with highly specialized equipment that Sarah and her team had developed. Equipment designed to emit a very specific frequency of electromagnetic radiation. The missiles struck the harvester ship's shields and detonated. The shields held, just as expected. But then something unexpected occurred. The shield began to pulse, rippling with waves of energy that spread across its surface like water disturbed by a stone. Sarah's research had been correct. The collective shields operated on a harmonic resonance principle. By hitting them with the right frequency, humanity could create interference patterns that disrupted the shield stability. The harvester ship's shields flickered once, twice, and then collapsed entirely. For exactly 4 seconds, the massive vessel was completely unprotected. 4 seconds was all humanity needed. The second wave of missiles launched immediately. These were conventional weapons, enhanced with human ingenuity. Kinetic penetrators moving at hypersonic speeds, designed to punch through armor rather than explode against it. Nuclear warheads calibrated to detonate inside the ship rather than against its shields. And mixed among them, something special that humanity had developed in secret. Nanite swarms. Trillions of microscopic machines programmed with one simple directive. Find power sources and consume them. Each nanite was individually harmless, but in sufficient numbers, they could strip a ship of its energy systems in minutes. The harvester ship tried to reactivate its shields, but the nanites were already spreading through its hull, finding their way into power conduits and reactor chambers. The ship's weapons fired desperately, lashing out at the city below. Buildings exploded. Streets melted. Thousands died in those first few seconds. But the humans in those buildings had known the risks. They had volunteered to stay, to man the defense batteries, to be bait for the trap. Elena watched as the massive ship began to list, its systems failing one by one. The collective's crew was probably trying desperately to understand what was happening. Their shields should have held. Their armor should have been impenetrable. Nothing in their experience of 4,732 conquered worlds had prepared them for an enemy that could adapt and innovate this quickly. The Harvester ship crashed into the Hudson River with a force that sent waves crashing into Manhattan's shores. The impact was devastating, but it was a controlled crash. The ship had tried to minimize damage to itself, probably hoping to effect repairs. They didn't understand that the nanites were still eating through their systems, that the ship was already dead, it just didn't know it yet. Aurora command to all defense networks, Elena broadcast. First blood is ours. Repeat, we have confirmed a kill on a collective harvester ship. All units, execute Plan Defiance. Show them what humanity can do. Across the globe, similar scenes played out. In Tokyo, London, Mumbai, Sao Paulo, and 100 other cities, collective ships descended expecting easy victories and encountered fierce resistance instead. Not every defense worked. Many cities fell despite humanity's efforts. The collective's forces were simply too numerous, too powerful. But everywhere they went, they paid a price. Every ship they lost, every delay they encountered, every human who fought back was a surprise to them. The collective had conquered 4,732 species. But none of those species had been human. None of them had possessed the particular combination of stubbornness, creativity, and sheer bloody-minded determination that characterized humanity. The collective had expected a quick harvest, a clean assimilation. What they got instead was a war. And the war had only just begun.